Welcome back to NewsX Deep Dive with me, Devika Devan. Blocked roads, trees and buildings set on fire, multiple crude bombs and massive protests. Today, Bangladesh woke up to another day fueled with violence ahead of a special tribunal verdict against the deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in a case of alleged crimes against humanity. Let's take a look at some of the visuals that have come in from the protests. The capital city of Dhaka, which generally remains gridlocked on weekday mornings, woke to near empty roads with only scattered cars and rickshaws moving through heavily policed interceptions. However, as the day progressed, the scene changed completely. On your screens is a picture from Dhaka where Sheikh Hasina's Awami League carried out a lockdown to protest the charges imposed against the Ouster Prime Minister. Look at the streets today. The streets of Dhaka, Chattogram and smaller towns are filled with smoke from burning buses, shattered glass from bombed banks and the constant wail of sirens. Crude bombs exploded before dawn, arson attacks followed and army patrols with shoot at sight orders also given. But this is just the aftermath. Yesterday, Bangladesh witnessed a string of crude bomb explosions in Dhaka, intensifying the tension gripping the capital ahead of today's verdict in a case against former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina over alleged violence during last year's street protests. No injuries, however, were reported, but the blasts further fueled the anxiety spreading through the city after days of turmoil. That's not all, however. Thousands rallied the streets of Dhaka in massive protests, leaving nothing but ash in their wake. Security has been ramped up across Dhaka and several other regions amid scattered arson attacks and additional crude bomb incidents. Let's take a look at some of the visuals of the violence that have come up from Dhaka. On your screens, viewers, is a video from last night. We can see thousands of people marching down the streets of Dhaka protesting against the Unrest government ahead of a verdict on the charges against Sheikh Hasina. The situation worsened after Dhaka's police chief issued shoot-at-sight orders for anyone involved in arson or crude bomb attacks. Speaking of the crude oil attacks, here's another video where we can see a bus was set on fire in the middle of the road. We see protesters gathered just a little away from the bus with phones out, perhaps documenting the chaos they left in their wake. In what can only be called an ironic incident, these protesters, who were backed by Unrest when Sheikh Hasina was ousted, have turned their backs now on Unrest. The Grameen Bank headquarters in Mirpur, the very institution that once symbolized hope for the poor, has been gutted by fire bombs. These protests, however, have been going on for a week now. In fact, arson is not the only form of violence the protesters have resorted to. Here's a video of protesters clashing with the Bangladesh police. You see them kicking the policemen, hurling stones, sloganeering and in fact overpowering the forces. You see the policemen running away from the crowds to save themselves. What we're witnessing today is the direct continuation and escalation of the chaos that began on the 5th of August 2024, the day Sheikh Hasina fled the country through a helicopter. Here's a video, in fact, of when Sheikh Hasina, remember, had fled Bangladesh. The moment her plane left Bangladeshi airspace, jubilant crowds stormed the Gana Bhavan office, which is her official residence. They did not just occupy the palace, they looted it with a fury that shocked the world. 15 months ago, there were protesters that trespassed the then Prime Minister's home and brazenly looted and flaunted themselves at her property. From the Holy Quran to Sheikh Hasina's innerwear, nothing was left behind. Designer saris, gold jewelry, laptops, furniture, even live ducks, fish and rabbits from the private ponds, everything was symbolized. 15 years of Awami League rule was carried away in broad daylight. Protesters posed for selfies wearing Hasina's clothes, swam in her swimming pool and scrawled the names of martyred students on the walls. Television footage showed young men dragging away refrigerators, women stuffing luxury handbags into sacks, and children riding stolen bicycles through the marble corridors once guarded by elite forces. Ever since the former Prime Minister was ousted, Bangladesh has seen a series of such protests. Let's take a look at a few of them. We saw with the nationwide sit-in protest by the BNP and its allies on the 15th and 16th of August last year. These sit-ins demanded Sheikh Hasina's trial for genocide related to the July and August crackdown that killed hundreds of protesters. Thousands gathered in Dhaka and major cities defying curfews, leading to clashes with security forces and reports of 10 plus deaths. The protests pressured the new interim setup for accountability, but highlighted emerging factional rivalries. The next was the Bangladesh Ansar paramilitary protest on the 25th of August 2024. A faction of the paramilitary Bangladesh Ansar staged demonstrations at the Bangladesh Secretariat in Dhaka protesting delayed salaries, poor conditions and perceived favoritism in the post-Hasina security reforms involving hundreds of uniformed personnel. The action paralyzed central administration and raised alarms about military loyalty splits, resulting in brief standoffs with police and calls for UNICEF's intervention. Another major protest came a year after the former Prime Minister's ouster in August this year, marking the exact date of Hasina's ouster. Student-led groups and civil society held massive rallies in Dhaka and across the country, commemorating the July Revolution while criticizing UNICEF for slow reforms and economic woes. Tens of thousands participated, with some vandalizing Awami League symbols, but it turned tense with reports of 5+ arrests. UNICEF responded by unveiling the July proclamation for electoral roadmaps, yet frustration over unfulfilled promises lingered. Bangladesh viewers at this point in time stands at a very terrifying crossroads. Mohammad Yunus promises election by early 2026, but every week of bombings and arson makes that timeline feel more distant. Extremist groups with links to Lashkar-e-Taiba and ISIS have reportedly activated sleeper cells amid the chaos. The army is exhausted, the police is demoralized, and the ordinary people, Hindus, Muslims, rich or poor, are asking the same question: when will this end? The looting of Sheikh Hasina's palace in August 2024 was meant to be the final act of a quote-unquote tyrant's downfall. Instead, it became the opening scene of a tragedy that has no last act in sight. Taking this conversation forward with me is Ambassador Veena Sikri, former diplomat. Ambassador Sikri, thank you so much for joining us, ma'am. I have to begin by understanding from you your first thoughts as far as the current verdict against Sheikh Hasina is concerned, ma'am. What do you make of it?
Well, I am very clear in my mind that this particular court has no authority to issue this kind of verdict on Sheikh Hasina. I think the ICT, let us understand what it is. ICT is a court created way back in 2010 under Sheikh Hasina when she was Prime Minister, based on a much earlier parliamentary act of 1973. And the court was meant exclusively to try those who committed war crimes during the 1971 Liberation War. Now, from there, we saw that when Mohammad Yunus was sworn in as chief advisor, one of the first things he did was to try and take over the judiciary. His is not a constitutional government. It is a caretaker regime, interim regime, supposed to be there for 3 months and go. They're not allowed to take any major decisions. But through mobocracy, through mob violence, all the senior judges, including the ICT judges and prosecutors, they were either forced to resign by mobs surrounding them, or their homes were attacked. In any case, all of them were forced to resign. And those appointed in their place, again, Mohammad Yunus' government was not authorized to appoint judges and so on. That's not part of his remit. But he did that, and these are all Jamaat-e-Islami linked members of the judiciary now. And they have conducted this trial, in a record matter of a few weeks and days, the fastest ever in the history of Bangladesh, based on evidence which is not very clear. I mean, for example, you're saying 1,400 people have died. Now, you're saying that when did they die? Some of them died before 5th August. Some of them died after 5th August when Sheikh Hasina had already left the country. And secondly, we do know that there was a huge struggle between the Jamaat-e-Islami led Islami Chhatra Shibir. There were no genuine students there, but just these political parties. Jamaat-e-Islami is ruling the roost there and wants to form a government. Now, they, on their part, attacked police stations, more than 400, killed policemen in their hundreds, even more than 1,000 perhaps, looted weapons. And with these weapons, they have shot at individuals, even students. Actually, interim advisor member, Brigadier Shakawat Hussain himself said so. And then he was removed from his post after he said this. That, these weapons, they were looted and they were not meant to be with civilians, and then they were used to shoot other people. Now, clearly, these acts committed by the Islami Chhatra Shibir and others, they should also be looked into. But no, these people have been indemnified. They're not. Nobody's allowed to question what they did and where they did and how the policemen were killed and what happened to the police station which was burnt and the weapons which were looted. Everybody knows they're talking about the looted weapons, but nobody's doing anything to try those people. So this is a one-sided kangaroo court which is determined to give what they have given is a death sentence. And Sheikh Hasina has herself said that if there is a fair trial, now today in the ICC, in the International Criminal Court at The Hague, we know that a lawyer's company from the UK has filed a huge case giving all sides of the story. Awami League people have filed cases in the ICC, and Sheikh Hasina has said she's willing to go before the ICC and give all the facts and figures and see what they decide. So I think that one has to weigh this question of a kangaroo court, unauthorized, the weaponization of the judiciary that's taking place in Bangladesh, against a fair trial which takes into account all sides of what happened in July and August of 2024, and then comes to a verdict. Now, if you talk about orders to kill students, as of today, the present Muhammad Yunus-led government has issued identical orders in Bangladesh. Shoot to kill. Anybody who disrupts the peace and the law and order, shoot them. That is because they are trying to maintain law and order. So it's okay for them to give an order of shoot to kill, but if something happened in July, August, when the then Prime Minister was trying to control the situation, then you're saying that's an illegal it's an illegal act, it's a crime against humanity, etc. So I think first of all we have to really look into this aspect of what has happened to see whether at all it's a constitutional, a legally well delivered verdict from a legally constituted court. This is the first thing. Secondly, this whole question of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs issuing a one-liner saying, oh, here is the verdict, please send her back. Now we must know that when there's an extradition treaty, an extradition agreement between two governments, this is a very complex process which can take up to years. First of all, it's not a question of issuing a one-liner. First of all, the government of Muhammad Yunus, the interim regime, has to send to the government of India all the legal papers under which this verdict was issued. What was the evidence? What was tried? Was there was there a prosecutor for Sheikh Hasina? I mean, a defending lawyer for Sheikh Hasina? Was she allowed to give her own lawyer? They just gave her a lawyer and said, okay, this fellow will defend. So all these issues have to come up in a court in India. In that court in India, Sheikh Hasina can give her lawyers, the government of Bangladesh, interim regime, can give their lawyers. All the cases have to be argued. Only then a legal decision can be taken by the Indian courts on whether Sheikh Hasina can be extradited or not. This process takes years. So, to just say in a one sentence one line sentence that send her back or something, this is not going to work at all. So I think these aspects have to come very clearly. And also the third point I'd like to say is that it is very clear that the support of the Awami League for Sheikh Hasina, for its own existence as a political party, is very high. It's probably gone up in the last year and 15 months, and the people are there ready. They want to participate in the elections. So the best answer now is to have free, fair, inclusive and credible elections. Let all the political parties take part. Whoever forms the government, that is fine. It will be a democratically elected government, and India is by all means prepared to deal with them. We are prepared to deal with this government as well, but they are not prepared to deal with India.
But at the same time, as a Sikri, what do you make of the promise of free and fair elections in Bangladesh? Is that even a likelihood in the next few months? Muhammad Yunus had promised elections by February 2026, but given the current state in Bangladesh, which could possibly be being fueled by the current establishment itself to stay in power, how do we even believe that there will be any elections?
You're absolutely right. There's a lot of skepticism in Bangladesh whether the elections will even be held, because the premise is that everybody in Bangladesh knows that the Jamaat-e-Islami wants to come to power. And they are just trying to work out a means that will bring them to power. If not, they would prefer not to have elections. For example, they were working on this July National Charter and they adopted it. They appointed all kinds of reform committees. Again, not mandated at all for an interim government. You're not supposed to, all these kind of decisions on, bicameral legislature and so on. This can only be taken by a parliament, by an elected parliament. But they did that when they went ahead and had all these decisions taken by various committees and then wrote a July National Charter, and then they were insisting that this July National Charter must be put to the referendum in Bangladesh before the election. And the president has not accepted that. He has said that the July National Charter referendum and the elections will be held on the same day. So that is very clear. If you want to have elections and you want the July National Charter to be put to a referendum, do it on the same day. And this is the present decision. And so if the government of the day in Bangladesh, the Mohammed Yunus regime, is at all serious, they should go ahead and hold the elections. But it cannot be held under Mohammed Yunus as head of government, because he has not fulfilled any of the mandates that are required by a caretaker regime. The caretaker regime has to be somebody as is written in their constitution, when there was a caretaker regime. Subsequently, it was abolished. Now the courts are hearing the case about bringing it back. And the head of the caretaker regime is normally the immediately past, just retired Chief Justice. So all those procedures have to be gone through. It can't be that, Mohammed Yunus thinks that he himself will stay on and then be the chief during the elections. That is absolutely not mandated. The people of Bangladesh are not going to accept it. Very frankly, I'll say that unless the proper procedures are followed, unless the mandate which the president has signed, the presidential order for the elections to be held and the July National Charter referendum to be held on the same day, unless those procedures are properly followed, and all political parties, you cannot just ban a political party, they just ban the activities of Awami League. On what basis? We saw in Sri Lanka where Rajapaksa's government was brought down and it was very unpopular. But when the elections were held, Rajapaksa's party was not banned. They took part in the elections. Similarly, in Nepal, the Oli government has fallen. But in the elections that are going to be held in March, the Oli, former Prime Minister Oli's party will be allowed to take part. So like that, in Bangladesh, all political parties should be allowed to take part. And whoever wins the election is fine. So
Yes.
I think that, this present regime wanting by all means to install a Jamaat-e-Islami government, that's not going to work.
Okay. All right, Ambassador Sikri, thank you so much, ma'am, for your time and perspective on this critical development taking place in our neighborhood. With our viewers, let's step into a very short break.